I really don't know if there's any chance that all this shit's going to work right.
It looks like it's working.
Right? Oh.
Crazy.
Power and Speed, we're back.
We are back. We're Power and Speed, 908-751-0211. Thaddeus.
And like us on Facebook, now live, and iTunes.
How about it?
Now, we probably got to talk about this whole Facebook
Live.
thing a little bit.
Yeah, we spent some time yesterday.
We already have people typing on our page. So
Well, that's exactly what this comes down to. Look, we have a hard enough time, and I get a little nutty. I tend to be, would you say I'm a control freak?
No. Yes.
I tend to be a little irritated when I'm talking to somebody and they're not looking at me.
Yep.
And they're reading their chat room. So now a listener brought up a very good question. What are you going to follow? You going to follow Mixler? You going to follow Facebook?
Live Facebook, yeah.
How about none? I think the best way, the dicky answer is if you got a question, call.
Yeah, but then it becomes a problem with people calling and rambling and talking about,
and we can only get to so many.
Right. I
think the guy that talks the least should maybe monitor activity. As we both look at Ted.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, maybe you could just keep an eye out. And
Yeah,
I don't even know how to watch Facebook, so I'm just watching the.
Oh, that's great. So I got one idiot watching Facebook and another idiot watching Mixler. That's fantastic.
I'm just watching the pictures roll by.
And then we've got
There's one picture.
Yeah, everybody understand this is not live video. We don't have cameras in here. We're just doing it to put the audio up.
And so people know it's not a stuck picture or something.
Yeah, and I don't know. Tad created something over there. I don't know what exactly
On the
got.
fly.
But we also don't know what to do with this after the broadcast is complete. Do we leave it on Facebook? Do we take it off Facebook and just replace it with our publish link? Do we? I mean, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's got to come down.
Yeah,
it's got to come down because it'll skew our.
Well, it'll mess things up for trying to figure out where things are coming from.
Right.
So I don't
until we figure out the science of it, because literally we met yesterday. What's today? Monday.
Yeah.
All day.
We did meet yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we met yesterday morning, and Mike was yelling at everybody.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But it did get figured out.
Because you're retarded, Tad.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Now we got to go down this road.
I'm not going to turn on Ted. Maybe I will.
Okay. How long did it take me to get that thing working when I walked over there? Be fair.
27 seconds.
All right. How long was Tad on it?
More than that.
Okay. Yes, right under the bus, Tad.
Whatever.
Both back tires. You're fucked.
That was the best I could do for you, Ted.
But I survived.
Yes.
You did.
And we got it working.
You got it done. Yeah, we got it done.
Well, now that I know how this works, I can edit.
Well, that's how this has got to work. Somebody's going to have to, handle that side of it.
Right.
And at this point, with 3 people, it is what it is.
Well, now that I saw that and I can back up and have different files, that's kind of more interesting.
Well, if anybody has any feedback, if that's working, or it sounds okay,
yeah, anything.
put it on our Facebook or whatever. We just want to make sure it's all right. And what else happened? 24 hours of Daytona.
Yeah, I watched the end.
Yep, I got fucked.
Yeah, you did. Them yellow cars are just, they got no power, man.
It's the color.
No, well.
And this is really bad because you end up rooting for 2 people or 2 companies you don't like, Porsche and Ford. Well, I was actually rooting for Porsche.
And you hate Porsche.
I hate Porsche. I hate Porsche.
So it was like anybody but Ferrari?
Anybody but Ferrari, anybody but Ford. It was just, it was bad.
Why did you hate Ferrari?
Not a big fan.
Okay.
Is it because of the original thing way back when, or?
The original thing
back when they dominated and Ford went to take them out and they had a big argument, because I know you're not a Ford fan, that's for sure.
I'm also not quite that much of a historian, Todd.
Okay. No.
I don't have any clue, and I don't think most other people, but whatever. No, but you know why the Corvettes, this is their balancing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're hip to any of this.
I'm not.
Apparently they did so well last year. They put on like 10 or 20 kilograms on them. I don't remember if it was 10 or 20.
That's a lot.
And they cut the restrictor. They actually have intake restrictors. They have 2 throttle bodies, at least the pictures of the engines I saw, which would have been the C6Rs.
Is that 33 pounds?
What?
10 kilograms?
2.2. So
it's 22 pounds.
So, well, every 10 pounds would be 22.
Yeah.
So if it was 20 kilograms, it would be like 40-something pounds.
44, yeah.
Yeah, not good.
0.8.
they have two throttle bodies, almost like a Viper.
Yep.
And they've got restrictors in the throttle body. And I believe they used to be 24 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are 24 millimeter minus, I think, 0.3 for this year. They made them smaller. So now think about that. That's at RPM motor breathing through those little tiny restrictors.
Yep.
That's got to suck.
Yep.
And I'm sure the other teams probably have it too. There's probably one loser in there that doesn't have anything, because they're terrible. But that's how they balance. Well, guess what? The Ford, everybody championing the Ford GT. Oh, the GT one. They're yeah, okay, whatever. Their restrictor size went up, and they went back to shipping weight. Not happy.
No. It was obvious.
And I actually watched a lot of it.
See, I didn't. I watched the last maybe hour, and it was obvious to me that the Chevrolet was underpowered because they were in it. When their tires were good, they were all over everybody, and they got onto the to the bank track and
I honestly don't know what happened to the number 4 Corvette when I had done something or either change a channel for a minute or went somewhere, and I came back and they were like 20 something laps down. I'm like, what the fuck happened here?
I think the Cadillacs killed it in that P group.
Well, they were the overall winners.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's GTP. That's those crazy looking, what are they called?
GTP.
Prototypes.
They're prototypes. Yeah. And then I guess there's PC, which is prototype concept.
Yep.
I'm not like Alan's real good at all the designations and all that shit. I don't really know all that. I just know the ones that I'm concerned about.
Alan's good at something?
Yes, he is. There's a couple things.
Interesting.
Fine. It took a lot of looking to find them, but a couple things.
Yeah.
But it was nice that GM, won overall. I was quite pleased with that.
I didn't even know that. I shut it off before then.
Yeah, they won. Actually, the Cadillac that won, I think it's the 10 car, and that's the one that Jeff Gordon drove a leg.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I did watch some of that.
That was pretty cool.
Yep. He was pretty excited. I don't know if he was playing the game or he really was, but he looked pretty excited.
Yeah.
He looked real tall today too, compared to the other drivers.
I didn't notice that.
No, he didn't. He was like a foot shorter than all of them.
I was going to say, because I saw him standing like on a podium near one of the other guys, and he looked like a half a person.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on him, but
no, me neither. I like
look like a little tiny fella.
Yeah, I guess that is hating on him. All right, I take it back.
All right. So other than that, that's
Tad, what'd you do other than eat?
Hold on. Now wait a second. I'll just while we're on the subject of Tad, the other day we were going to go where he went today.
Yes.
To get food, and I know you think that sounds like the most bizarre thing in the world, but it was. We were going to go someplace to get food.
Okay.
Well, it turned out they closed.
Yep.
Well, it's 6:00 they closed.
Yeah, it was very strange. So we went to Five Guys.
Yep.
And I got a burger. And I'm sitting there, and Tad and I are sitting there talking and everything else. And I look on Facebook, and there's a picture of Tad's fucking Five Guys. Do you ever eat, dude, without posting it online?
No, it's just a
It's
sickness.
very strange, dude.
But I want to mention how Tom, during our test one on Sunday, said, oh, yeah, Mike's going to be a 300-pounder. No. I'm going to be the 300-pounder if we go video live.
Yeah, it's
especially now that I, found Costco and stuff. And
Tad did go there today.
I know.
How long were you in Costco, Tad?
That's twice we said their name, and I don't think they're paying for it.
No, not offhand.
Oh, speaking about saying somebody's name and not paying for it.
Yep.
I have to give a plug to Kano Labs. Kano.
Croyle.
Yep.
What did they do?
Well, there was a guy that worked at the old shop. He worked at the old shop, didn't really work at the old shop. Most people know how shops are. There's kind of people that are just around. He worked for a pharmaceutical company.
Yep.
And the people that worked at pharmaceutical companies, for the most part, everything I've seen, I got ceiling tiles, fluorescent light bulbs, everything you can imagine just seems to walk its way out of there.
Yep.
Among that was this industrial penetrant and lube that I could not find anywhere ever marketed. Like it was never, like on shelves or in auto parts stores, and it was made by Kano Laboratories. And of course, taking that piece of crap excursion apart, I found, that PB blaster and everything just didn't work. And I was like, man, I really need that shit I used to have.
You should have told me. I got tons of it.
You have it?
Yeah.
Where the hell did you get it?
Ordered it online. Gallon container and a spray bottle.
Did you really?
Yep. That stuff works wonders.
Well, anyway.
Wow.
I couldn't even believe that Tad has it because he doesn't really usually work. But I mean, he's got it. That's good. This stuff is incredible. If you use PB Blaster or you use Liquid Wrench or any of these other penetrants,
It's called Croyle.
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 It's made by
K-R-
Cano Labs. Well, Croyle is a product. That's their trade name. They have Silly Croyle, Aero Croyle. I bought like the whole set. I bought all kinds of different shit because I only use Silly Croyle, which is a penetrant. And I found all this other stuff, and I said, well, let me try it. But this stuff's fantastic. Right. So that's just I put on the webpage, on the Facebook.
Good
to
for
just
them,
tell
guys.
people that it's a good product.
I saw that.
And they didn't give us a dime. Not doing it for any reason other than
Public service announcement.
Yes, sir.
It was. So we got a good guest coming up.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people were waiting for this. Me too. Myself included.
Ditto.
Me too. In fact, after the show, I'm going to get on a plane, fly out there, and see him. Check out his place.
You're such a swell guy.
What I thought was a little more fucked up is I look over and you're wearing his shirt.
Of course.
Just for the cameras. Oh, wait. No, what cameras?
Well, whatever.
And I want to say that I think there's been times you've accused me of being a fanboy.
No, I just
And so the guy's calling and you're wearing his shirt.
actually Tony gave me this shirt.
Okay.
So there.
That's fine.
It's a TI shirt. And did I see Travis Cook is he in the chat room?
I don't know. We'll let Tad handle that. So anyway, the guest is Tom.
It's Paul Yaw from Injector Dynamics.
Yes, sir. And we do have questions that came over Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got questions of our own. And, who knows where the conversation with Paul will go. Who knows how long it will last.
Seems interesting.
Yes.
From things I've seen he's posted.
Yes, quite interesting. So, I mean, I have a lot of my own personal things that I've always wondered and things I've noticed, and I want to get his feeling on it.
Hey, ask Ginger Tuned if he's going to be around on Wednesday afternoonish. Well, he hears me. He'll just answer, I guess, right?
But is he right out there too?
Yeah. Like my hotel is like within 5 miles of a bunch of people.
Now, where are they? Arizona?
Yeah. Yep. Solus is in, I forget the town.
Yeah, was he just posting that they got a racetrack at an airport that's being converted into a racetrack by him?
Oh, yeah?
Was that him or I don't know who it was?
I don't know.
Too many people on Facebook.
He's in like Gilbert or Chandler or some shit. I don't know. I know it's close because I mapped it all out. So I was gonna surprise him, but it's not gonna be a surprise anymore.
Just don't listen. When what Tom said is irrelevant.
Yeah. Just kidding.
I mean, I guess we'll have to see if we have time for calls.
Yeah.
And how things work. I really don't know how it's going to work out. I mean, we tried to prepare as much as we could, but there's a lot of information here. And then again, depending on if we get off track, who knows where the hell we're going to be.
Yeah, hopefully we won't get off track. So Tad, what else you got going on?
Besides eating? Not a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I got another set of tires. I got to put on another set of rims for the Subaru.
Yeah, that's right. We got to drill down on that thing too. That
Well, I guess it's pretty much ready to go.
It's supposed to be done.
So it's just a matter of getting it here, getting it in Tad's car, and
me picking up a set of injectors and whatnot.
Well, yeah, it's true. You're going to need injectors.
Yes, because my
you can ask him that stupid ass question about taking a. I still don't know what the hell that is.
Somebody else asked to ask that question too, and there are questions to ask.
What is that?
You knock off the top to open it up and let it go full.
But you knock off the top.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it's a strainer or
no,
what.
the bottom.
Well,
yeah, it's right at the nozzle, right?
The nozzle.
Well,
because mine used to be 440 cc's or whatever. When you do that, it puts them up to 740 or so.
So what are you doing? Are you removing like the shroud of the pintle or something? Doesn't that change how atomization is or anything?
That's what I thought, but hey, everybody was doing it, so I did it. It was the only way I could do it back then.
Well, I mean, just hear me out here. Right. Just logic would dictate if you're getting more fuel through it, you had to have removed this restriction.
Right.
And if it's in the side that sprays into the port, I would have to think that you're removing what would help it atomize, wouldn't you?
That's what you'd think. That's what I thought too, but everybody's doing it. It was working. I was going to complain.
Well, I mean, all those things are questions for Paul. And I mean, I've got a lot of them. Like, I mean, one of the things that I'm wondering is how important is atomization? And you and I've talked about it, and we've looked at it.
Between atomization and placement of it. So.
Yeah. Like we saw those Formula One deals where the injectors were at the very top of the stacks, actually pointing out.
So you can actually see the gas going down into the tubes and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's for keeping the temperature down and atomizing, letting it atomize that much more, but it wasn't going to hit the sides and condense. I don't know.
Well, I've said it before. It was, I believe it was Kinsler when they, did some fuel injected manifolds that we had used for some of the circle track stuff. They had multiple injector locations, so you could put them, high up and then different angles, and like a bushing would go in that would angle the thing.
Right.
So there's more to it. And I know it's where the placement is important, because like down nozzle placement in a motor that actually has, like, they go in right through the port from the outside of the motor. That's like magic. You pick up like a ton of bottom when you get them in the right place.
And Travis just posted that makes the injectors run like shit, but that was before we had good injectors.
But again,
so
you mean taking the top off? Yeah. Well, I wouldn't doubt it.
But that, like I said,
I mean, what the hell would you care? You couldn't even drive that friggin' thing around with that stupid differential, and you had that dumb clutch forever. I know, Tad, the clutch is gone. But I mean,
clutch is gone, but the differential's still there, though.
It was so far from a drivable street car, it was insane.
No, it was rice.
It was what?
It was rice.
I don't understand.
I don't understand this either.
It was obnoxious. It was an obnoxious import.
It was awful. I remember driving that piece of crap. So yeah, you're going to need injectors. What else do you need to complete your thing?
I'm going to stick with the turbo that I have now, just for
good plan.
What it's got. The fuel system, I don't know if I'm going to have to upgrade it or not. It's all going to depend on the size of the injectors I get. Basically, I want it to go bigger, so I find.
Well, I don't think the fuel system depends on the size of the injectors. I think it more depends on the power the motor makes, buddy.
Yeah. Oh,
but listen, I got to tell you, if you hang around here long enough, you might learn something.
Mm-hmm.
You might get that all.
Yeah, you might figure some stuff out.
I'll learn to get a Corvette and be pissed. But anyway.
Poor Tad.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got Paul Yaw. You're on the air, buddy.
We do. Hey, I'm already pissed off. Why don't I get any bumper music?
Bumper music?
Bumper music. Come on, man.
Like he's sitting in a green room waiting to come on.
Sorry.
We had to actually put up protester fencing at the bottom of the driveway to make sure nobody got in here.
It's crazy.
Oh, shit.
It's terrible.
That would be cool. I think I would enjoy that.
That's if we can have live people on,
Why would it be target practice from the front porch?
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. The difference, though, is that once all those motherfuckers started blocking traffic, as in fucking with other people who have nothing to do with their complaint, I would be looking for some concussion grenades, fun stuff.
It is crazy how after we talk about injector stuff, at some point we're gonna have to talk about the world. As a matter of fact, when Tom came into the studio, he actually, right when he sat down, his phone rang and he's like, "Hello?" He's like, "No, this is his father." And then he's quiet and he goes, "Oh, this is a political survey? Sure, I'll talk to you."
It was great. It was great. So anyway, well, we are glad to have you, sir. How's everything in Arizona?
Good, really good. It's, Arizona this time of year. I mean, if you've been here, you know that in the summer it's the most awful fucking place in the entire world, right? I mean, it's like sticking your head in an oven. But there's
somewhat
6 months out of the year where it's paradise.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of that right now.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's pretty awesome here. In fact, this time of year when you go to lunch or go to run an errand, the last thing you want to do is get in one of your normal vehicles, so you end up in a little four-wheeler or something like that, so you can feel the breeze in your face.
Oh, that's right. You guys can drive all that stuff right on the road. Yeah, we live in the communist state of New Jersey, so.
Really? I mean, like, they could drive, like, Polarises and stuff?
Yeah.
Like the side-by-sides?
One of my buddies in Anthem just bought a Yamaha side-by-side, the good one with the, sequential and everything. Yeah, he's driving. He drives to work.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. I mean, I used to think a lot of it had to do with just my neighborhood and where I was, because I'm surrounded by cows and horses and cowboy hats and rednecks, but it's an Arizona statewide thing. Now that I say that, I guess that describes all of Arizona, right? Sorry.
Did you grow up there?
No, I moved here when I was 16. I grew up in Michigan.
Oh.
Talk about culture shock.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Ooh, that's a big difference.
I got to get the hell out of here.
Me too.
Every time I talk to somebody, it sounds better than here. And it's bad. When everybody you talk to, it's better than here.
Yeah, probably is.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of the deal? The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yep.
No, not if you're in New Jersey. The grass is actually always greener.
Yeah. This place is the exception of the rule.
I can tell already Well, I mean, I know Tom, but I can tell just from chatting that we could wander off and probably piss off all of your listeners as we start ranting and raving about government bullshit. So we should probably talk about cars. I told Tom I was going to be good. So
let's get on it.
and by the way, I told when Tom originally asked me about this, I said, hey, I'd like to plan ahead a little bit, make it a really good show, make it good for you guys, make it good for Injector Dynamics, good for me. And I've been busy, and it was kind of last minute. And so rather than trying to think about anything I might want to talk about at the last minute, I said, fuck it. I'm just going to show up. I haven't heard your podcast. I have no fucking idea what you're going to ask, or even if you're going to ask or somebody else is going to ask. So I'm just here completely off the cuff, and it'll probably be more fun that way.
Gotcha. You're going to have fun. It'll be fun. And we've actually done a lot of these, well, not a lot, but a fair amount with manufacturers. And we try to be, I would tell you that the easiest way to state this is don't worry about being too technical, because the guys want kind of like the higher level information. I mean, look, we could ask you, say, well, what's a fuel injector do? But that's not what our guys are about. Our guys are listening to things about ring seal and the finer points of manufacturing torque converters and everything. It'll be fun.
Oh, cool. Good.
Well, let's have at it. Go ahead, Mike. You said you got a million questions, and I'm going to warn you right now, Paul. Marco is in the chat room, so only God knows what'll happen now.
Here for the gangbang, he says.
Yeah.
Marco's the guy out there that I admire, because Marco doesn't give a fuck.
No.
You can like him or you can not like him, and he doesn't care. And something about that makes me like him a little extra.
Yeah, right.
Tell him I said that. In fact, hey, wait, he's in the chat room?
Yeah.
Yeah, he heard it.
The Mixler.
Do me a favor. Yeah, tell him Paul said suck my balls. Get it off to a good start.
Go ahead, Ted. Type that.
Well, if he's in the chat room, he's going to hear it.
Yeah.
Says it.
Yeah, everybody will say it.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Let's get a question.
He put a heart signal, a heart emoji up.
So one of the biggest questions that I've always had about specifically injectors. I mean, you want to talk about your product first, like what sets you guys apart, or where would you like to jump into this?
I don't want to do a sales pitch at all. I really don't like that kind of thing. I would rather talk about technical details. I'm not going to pitch my stuff on your show.
Should I ask him the first main question that I had?
Go ahead, Ted. You talk the least.
Any idea if you're ever going to do any diesel injectors?
I would say almost certainly no.
No? Okay.
Now, having said that, there's always a possibility, because maybe someday we wake up and realize all the cars on the road are diesel and they have huge tuning potential. And in that case, I would want to look at it. But I have to say that the diesel engine is so different, not just the injector, but the way the engines work. I know absolutely nothing about them, and I would have a steep learning curve. I'd have to purchase a number of vehicles to do testing and understand things better. So it would be almost as foreign as if I decided to go make brake calipers. I mean, the difference between a diesel injector and a gasoline port injector is almost that extreme.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it either. I have a 7.3 truck, and understanding the mechanism behind like the piston forcing the fuel and everything, the whole thing's pretty weird.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, I'm sure that person asked because they wanted to know if there might be something available in the future. I don't have an exact answer for that person in terms of a good supplier, but there is one. They work closely with Bosch Motorsport just like we do. So the easiest way for me to get that information to whoever asked the question is to get him to go on to Facebook and look for the Bosch Motorsport North America Facebook page, and then send a message asking who's the aftermarket company they work with that does diesel injectors, and I'm sure somebody there will respond and put them in touch with the good guys, because as I understand it, there's one or two good guys, and then there's everybody else. And if anybody's going to know who the good guys are, it'll be Bosch Motorsport.
Works for me.
Got it. Good, Mike, you got one. I know you got one.
My biggest thing that I have to think that just about everything comes down to with injectors, it has to be delivery versus atomization. It has to be. Because I know what happens with carburetors on a dyno with brake-specific fuel curve, that you can see a carburetor move the same amount of fuel, move approximately the same amount of air. The power's dog shit. And it's the only thing really left here is atomization or distribution. So on the atomization side, I mean, this gets into so many questions: fuel pressure, injector position, air speed through the port versus, injector angular placement. I mean, it gets pretty crazy.
So let's consider atomization first by by defining it as a measure of let's say the average droplet size.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have better atomization, we have smaller droplets. So right off the bat, let's keep direct injection out of the conversation, because the requirements for atomization and the effect that atomization has on a DI engine are totally different. So specifically just with port injectors, we can, I say we, I don't mean I can, but I have sent injectors out for droplet size testing. You can quantify that. There's a number of ways you can look at it and kind of scratch your head and get a feel for what you have there in terms of one droplet being bigger than another. But what you'll find is that when you try to come up with a correlation inside of a running engine, it's nearly impossible. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So initially, we say a smaller droplet size absolutely has to be better. Why would it not be better? And I'm going to agree 100% that if we spray fuel into a large open container, that the droplet size is going to have a great deal to do with how homogeneous the entire mixture is. It's going to affect flame travel speed, because the smaller the droplets are, the greater surface area they have, the easier it is for the flame front to vaporize the layers of fuel in front of it. And so everything about that is going to be better. Unfortunately, the situation that we have inside of a port on an engine is entirely different. And one of the things that'll really stand out, or I hope really stands out when I mention this, that the intake stroke on a four-stroke engine is roughly equivalent to about 25% of a complete engine cycle, right? A complete engine cycle is 720 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You go from top dead center to bottom dead center is about 25% of that. So what you have to consider ultimately is that, and obviously that's a rough number, because we know that valve open timing is much greater than that, but the actual act of drawing fuel and air into the cylinder occupies 25% of the cycle. So we have this concept of breaking fuel into little tiny droplets and cleanly shoving it past that valve into the combustion chamber, where we say, wow, this is great, we've got all these little droplets, it's going to burn great, everything's going to be wonderful. But the fact is that even that concept alone is impossible if your injector duty cycle is greater than 25%. And even if we look at a system with large, let's say a large valve open window on the intake side, meaning far greater degrees, obviously, than that 180, the amount of time that the airflow through that valve is actually high is still fairly closely approximates that 25%. The rest of the time, the fuel is quite literally being sprayed onto the back of the valve. And so if you take a bottle of Windex and hold it up in the air and spray it, I don't know about you, I've always been surprised at how small the droplets are, and now go spray it onto a window, and look at what happens is all of those droplets coalesce onto the glass.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a better indication of what's happening inside of an engine, because first of all, the valve is closed, for the majority of the cycle, and most of the fuel that you spray in there is going to coalesce on the port surfaces. Now, to take that a step further, that's just the first thing to consider in a very complex system. The next thing is that when you spray the fuel into the runner, the back of the intake valve, at least once the motor is warmed up, is very hot. And so what happens then is that the fuel starts to vaporize. And at this point, it's very clear to consider the distinction between vaporization and atomization. So atomization, as we agreed, relates to the average droplet size, whereas vaporization describes a state change where the liquid goes from, where the fuel goes from a liquid state to a gaseous state. And so that's a good thing that's happening there on the back of the valve. And at that point, if you vaporize, let's say you were to vaporize 100% of the fuel you put on the back of the valve, it would hardly matter if you poured that fuel on the back of the valve with a teaspoon or you sprayed it from a Windex bottle.
All right, so for clarification, the actual state of gas vapor versus atomization is, for lack of a better term, ideally what we would like to get to.
Well, and it is ultimately what you will get to if you want the engine to start.
Okay.
Because as they say, liquid fuel doesn't burn, but the vapor does, which is why it's so hard to get engines to start when they're cold. So you've got to consider that being part of it. So you spray, you lose a great deal of your atomized fuel by coalescing on the backside of the valve. Then it boils off, so you've got a lot of gas there as opposed to a liquid, which is a good thing. When the valve opens, the air and liquid fuel and gaseous fuel are being drawn across, the edge of the valve and the valve seat. There's a lot of shear action there that helps to break droplets up, mix them up with the incoming air, particularly dependent on swirl and tumble in the head, charge motion. And then once you get it into the cylinder, you've got temperature there to vaporize the fuel. But ultimately, the point I'm trying to make is that there's a very large percentage of the fuel that, no matter how hard you try to break it up into a droplet, is going to coalesce onto the surfaces inside of the port. And what you had in terms of atomization that you could measure is no longer the case. And when you start to think about that fuel getting drawn through in a running engine, you'll start to get a different picture of how atomization may or may not affect that. I will tell you that the one area where atomization is a pretty big deal, and this is where the majority of the work gets done at the OE level. When I say OE level, I mean the fuel injector manufacturers, and why spray targeting is so critical is during cold starts, you'll notice that all modern vehicles will essentially center the injection event over the valve event, meaning they're going to try to spray when the valve is as far open as it could possibly be, and they're going to try to spray it in such a manner that in a perfect world, it would not touch anything but air on the way in.
So directly into the cylinder without being a direct injected, or as close to as possible.
Right. They're trying to achieve that ideal because at that point, you don't have any heat to help vaporize that fuel. The only thing at that point that's vaporizing the fuel is the fact that it tends to be very volatile. When you're filling your car up with gas, you see the vapors coming off. That's what actually lights off first on a cold engine. But in that case, the spray targeting and the droplet size or atomization is pretty critical. But if you could sit down and have a conversation with the people at the OE level that are designing the fuel injectors, they'll all agree that once you get that thing warmed up and going and get your foot in it, that's simply no longer a concern. And I've got what I think is a pretty interesting story about playing with that and getting some results that no one would expect. But I've kind of wandered off a bit on this one, so let me stop here and see if you guys have any questions, and then if you want, I'll tell the story related to atomization, a spray pattern that I think you might find interesting as well.
Well, the whole thing's pretty interesting because I understand what you're saying and explaining it this way. It makes perfect sense, but I would have thought that atomization of the injector side was crucial.
Right here, we got a question. Somebody asked if there's a difference between the flow rate from gasoline to E80 or versus E85.
Well, that kind of goes a different direction, Ty, because let's keep talking about the atomization stuff, and then we'll get to that one. And I mean, I guess there probably are some flash off differences as far as how it does atomize and how it does turn into vapor. But no, tell the story about the injector spray.
Yeah, I'm
pattern.
kind of interested in that. Yeah.
Me too.
Let me say one thing first that I think helps to understand this, particularly for guys like me and you guys who spent our early years playing with carburetors. In fact, by the way, you guys all know who Dave Braswell is, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's right there in Tucson, where I spent all my early years playing with engines. So I got to spend quite a bit of time playing with just the kind of thing that you guys are talking about. One thing important to keep in mind with a carburetor is that the fuel flow is nearly proportional to the airflow instantaneously. I don't mean measured over time. I mean just across an individual cycle. The airflow ultimately in a runner or through the carburetor and past the booster starts and stops every cycle. And so when the airflow across the booster is almost nothing, the fuel flow out of the booster is also almost nothing. So one of the cool things that happens is that compared to a fuel injector, we end up with, right off the bat, at the very least, a mechanism that will do a better job of creating a homogeneous mixture by giving you a proper ratio the whole time. Whereas with a fuel injector, you can squirt all of the fuel at the point where there's almost no airflow and then hope the shit gets mixed up and makes sense later on. But because of the way that a carburetor works, it's much more likely for the droplets that have come out of the booster to stay in suspension and follow the airflow down the runner and past the valve without impinging on the runner walls. Does that make sense why that might be the case?
Makes complete sense, because the air movement as it stops and starts in the runner, essentially so is the fuel delivery. It's all together.
Yeah. And so you're never injecting a shitload of fuel at a point where you don't have any airflow.
Yep.
And so it ends up tracking airflow much better, which makes booster design much more critical. You know, you move on to annular boosters, but just various types of boosters that in addition to changing the signal, create better or worse bits of atomization. And it certainly shows up better in terms of being something you can correlate to engine performance on the dyno than it does with a port fuel injector.
You know, that kind of leads to a question that I had, because it comes up here. It's come up here before, and it's come up in my career a couple of times, and I don't know if there is a true answer, but carburetors versus actually the question I have is, can a properly tuned fuel injection system really make more power than a carburetor?
I would say, well, that's a question that deserves a long answer.
I know, man.
But so right off the bat, let me say that it's a hard comparison to make in the sense that if you do like NASCAR does and you put you take an intake manifold that was meant for use on a carburetor and you plop a 4-barrel throttle body up on top of it and put some injectors down in the runners at the most awful fucking location that you can possibly imagine, you can definitely run into problems there where things just aren't going to go well. So if you were to compare a fully optimized carburetor setup to a fully optimized fuel injector setup, I don't know that it's reasonable to argue that in theory, conceptually, that a fuel injected engine will necessarily make greater peak power. I mean, they're both doing the same thing, right? They're putting air and fuel in there. So, I mean, at the end of the day, why does one necessarily have to work better than the other? But here's what happens that is important. You can get better mixture distribution, by far better mixture distribution with a fuel injected system because you have control over individual cylinders. And that's a big, big, big deal. You have greater freedom in intake manifold design because you don't have to worry about a wet manifold. You don't have to worry about fuel impinging on a 10-inch long runner like you do with a carburetor. I mean, carbureted engines can get pretty pissy when you're trying to pass that fuel down a long runner with bends in it because the fuel, again, starts to come out of suspension and coalesce on the runner wall, which creates a lot of problems, which is the other story that I'll get to eventually. But, I got to think if somebody said, here are the rules for the engine, meaning here's your displacement, compression ratio, this or that, see how much power you can make. I can't imagine why you couldn't ultimately do a better job with fuel injection because of the amount of control that you have over simple things like mixture distribution between cylinders.
I would think that go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, people go test by slapping throttle body fuel injection on a carburetor manifold and say, the carbureted motor makes better power. Well, the one advantage the carburetor has, which is the ability to finely atomize the fuel and keep it in suspension on the way into the motor, kind of goes away down at lower RPM. I mean, if you ever used like a timing light to look at the fuel coming out of a booster when you're making a dyno run, it's kind of scary, but I've done it more times than I would like to admit. The size of the droplets coming out of that booster at low speed and down the mid range. I mean, it's like big fucking rocks coming out there. It's amazing they burn it all.
Yeah, they land on the butterfly.
Yeah, and so, presumably the butterfly's open if you're at full throttle, but if you look at things like that, you realize that there's another advantage there in fuel injection because you can optimize things across an entire range as opposed to just at a particular point. And I guess in drag racing where you've got the car set up where it maintains a nearly constant RPM for the length of the run, some of the advantages of fuel injection go away. But in any case, the one thing I want to make clear is I've never even tried to make that determination on the dyno because it would be so expensive to try to do so. I know a lot of people have, and half of them come back and say, see, I told you a carburetor's better, and the other half come back and say, see, I told you fuel injection is better. And at the end of the day, I can't say that I really give a fuck because I don't want to be stuck with a carburetor trying to figure out in the poles, the middle of a corner, having to rejet all the time. By the way, big fucking pet peeve. A lot of guys who used to be into carburetors are used to rejetting all the fucking time. The wind changes direction and they got to rejet the fucking carburetor, right?
Never.
And for some reason, yeah, exactly. So people have decided that it's okay for fuel injection to work the same way. So some dumb fuck who has no concept of how to put proper compensation tables in an ECU and use them correctly end up following these fucking cars to the racetrack and retuning them all the time because they're not utilizing some of the power of fuel injection because they're too fucking dumb or they're too fucking lazy or they appreciate all the extra paychecks. I'm not sure which. But the short story is, they've got this nice high-tech piece of equipment and they're using it like a fucking hammer. So anyway, now that I got that off,
I'm not sure. I think they're taking advantage of the latter, the paycheck, because of the nature of the beast, and the customer probably doesn't know of compensation tables.
Well, but not only the compensation tables. That's, I mean, to me, and I mean, Paul can certainly answer this in his opinion. We've talked to a bunch of different tuners. There's a very wide range of acceptable fuel ratio. And, I love the guys that are at the racetrack and, it changed 5 degrees or a couple 100 feet and they're looking for a quarter-size jet or something stupid. There's a level where you got to worry about it and there's a level that you shouldn't.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one area where I think things can get weird is when you do have poor mixture distribution, or let's just say any engine, carbureted or fuel injected, where you haven't had the time or haven't been able to put the expense into it to tune it each cylinder individually, then maybe you've got some cylinders that are on the ragged edge. Maybe the weather changes a little bit and your compensation tables are off, or it's a carburetor and you get one cylinder now that's suddenly making some trace detonation or it's kind of falling off the cliff in terms of leanness. I mean, this could be a big deal as well. So sometimes grabbing for a quarter jet size, I can see how you'd look and say that's stupid, and maybe it is. I don't have the experience myself, but maybe sometimes it's critical. And I'll tell you one more thing about mixture distribution and NASCAR, where I mentioned that some fucking blind retard decided where the fuel injector should go in those manifolds. These guys have to go to such extremes to even out the cylinder distribution that the lowest flowing injector out of the 8 is being commanded by a pulse width that makes it deliver less than half the fuel of the highest flowing injector on the motor.
Wow.
Meaning the pulse width is less than half on the lowest flowing injector as opposed to the highest flowing injector. That's what they have to do to get the lambdas evened out on those things.
That's crazy.
And that's a fuel injected setup, but that's what happens when the fuel injector, somebody said, hey, I've got an idea. Let's aim the fuel injector at the fucking clutch pedal and see how this works. And so that's what they ended up with.
Wow.
And, because NASCAR, because they've got so much money and there are so many really fucking smart people involved, they just make it work. But that gives you an example of how bad things can be, and how much improvement you can make with fuel injection, because that gets really hard to do with a carburetor. I mean, you guys have seen carburetors with different boosters in each hole, haven't you?
We had a Dale Kubik on, and he went through all of the changes per barrel on a Pro Stock carburetor. We were shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to deal with fuel injection.
Yep. Couple of keystrokes.
Cool to see. Yeah, it's cool to see people go to that kind of extreme, though. I get excited when I see things like that. I'm not an anti-carburetor guy. I've built hundreds of them over the years before Injector Dynamics, and it's just exciting for me to see somebody going to that kind of extreme to make a motor work as well as possible. I don't care if it's a carburetor or a fuel injector or a couple of fucking monkeys spraying fuel out of Windex bottles. It's still cool to see people go to those extremes to get things right.
That is true. Very true. Hey, what does it take? Somebody asked this question, and I'm curious. It may be a dumb question, but can too much pressure actually lock up an injector? I mean, I guess I could answer my own. Of course, it could, but where do you need to be, like in the injectors that you sell? What would it take?
Well, so for my pieces, for instance, we're pretty clear on the website about the usable pressure range of the injector. And before an injector just plain locks up and won't open, things start to get really weird. Two things happen. One is that the response of the injector just gets screwy, and that's talking about at reasonable voltage levels. But here's the bigger issue, and this has happened. As I tell this story, there are going to be people listening to this nodding their heads. So you put some injectors in your car, you're tuning it on the dyno, or the tuner's doing this, and he decides, wow, the duty cycle's a little high. Let me bump the fuel pressure up a little bit. So he bumps the fuel pressure up, and the car won't start. There's a couple things going on there. One is that he's getting into the range that the injector's pissed off about, and he's getting into that range during cranking when battery voltage is low, right? So if I say, for instance, this injector will run up to 10 bar, I need to state the voltage required to make it run at 10 bar, because the first thing that happens is the injector starts to lock up or not open at lower and lower voltages, right? So it could be that at 3 bar pressure, an injector will open with 8 volts, but at 4 bar pressure, it needs 9 volts or 10 volts. And when you're cranking, the battery voltage goes low and the thing won't start. As you crank the pressure up more, now it takes 11 volts, now it takes 12 volts. If I want to run a port injector at 24 volts, we can run pretty high pressures. But the situation is very much related to voltage, and it's something that we spend a lot of time on when we designed the 1300, the 1700, the 1050, although it was easy with the 1050. What happens is you say, well, I want this injector to be able to run out to 7 bar, for instance, but you realize, well, the thing requires almost 11 volts to open out there, so no one's ever going to get their car to start. Who's got 11 volts during cranking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as to how you know what that range is, you have to expect that the person supplying the injector can tell you accurately. And so if you go to my website and you pull up any one of those injectors, you're going to see a chart in there that shows, flow rate and injector offset versus voltage at various pressures. And what you're going to notice is the pressure goes higher, you start to get these blocks that are labeled NA, as in the injector doesn't open there. So, everything's going great in the 8-volt column, and then you get up to 5 bar, and there's nothing in the 8-volt column because the injector will no longer open at 8 volts at that pressure. And so you quickly get to the point where starting the vehicle is going to be a problem. In the situation where people put injectors in and either the car won't start when it's hot or you change the fuel pressure and it won't start is not uncommon if the people selling the injectors don't understand what they're selling. And by the way, the problem normally shows up on a hot start because the injector is very hot. As the copper that makes up the coil gets hotter, its resistance is increased, which means the current flow goes down, which is essentially the same as lowering the voltage.
Yep.
Because the magnetic force is proportional to current flow. And so the car will start fine when it's cold, and then not start after a heat soak because it was right on the edge to begin with. And so there are a handful of injectors out there that are being peddled with claims that they'll run up to 7 bar that quite literally will not start a car at cranking voltage at 5 bar. Particularly, let's consider something like a Cadillac CTS-V or my ZL1 Camaro, where the fuel system is a little bit screwy. When you reflash it, it takes a while to learn the new pump parameters. And so even though it's essentially a 4-bar system, when you reflash the car and restart it, you'll have a differential pressure across the injector of over 80 psi. And so you can quickly get into a situation where the car runs fine until you reflash it, and then it won't start again unless it's cold, or, it just sort of goes on and on and on.
Oh.
It can get you into problems. But the assumption is that the person supplying your injector would not give you an injector that would cause those problems for you.
Got it.
Well, that whole discussion about fuel pressure and voltage to control the injector is how do I say this properly? Is the fuel pressure level set basically on what the working parameter is, or if there was a theory, would you want to use more pressure or less pressure, or does it depend on the injector design? Taking the voltage equation out of it, the opening and closing.
There's probably some variables there that might matter, and you may be able to prove that they matter, but I think they would be very application specific. So on some types of injectors, for instance, let's say that when you turn up the pressure, the velocity of the fluid coming out of the injector changes, just as a for instance, as something that could change. Well, what does that do to the running engine? Well, the answer is, I don't know, because every engine is different, but if the injector targeting is particularly good or particularly bad, how would that increased flow velocity affect the operation of the engine? How would it affect that process of getting the fuel past the valve and into the motor? So the short story is, I don't know the answer. I'm just pointing out that there are variables that could be affected by that. I haven't found that you can put an injector in a motor and say, oh my God, I turned it up to 4 bar and holy shit, all of a sudden I picked up 9 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just say that were the case, because I've heard that before. It's, something similar, and somebody would say, see, it's better atomization. Well, is the atomization really better? That's the first thing. How do you know? And let's not discount one other thing, that when you do that, your effective injector timing changes. When you change the pressure, you change the duty cycle. So whether you're injecting based on start of injection or end of injection, the window of fuel injection relative to the window of airflow has just changed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you even make that comparison? Now, one of the things that you can do that I've seen, well, I've done it myself and picked up some power, and I've seen people put some work into it and pick up some power, is to run a very, very oversized injector and then very carefully optimize injector timing so that you're, as much as possible, only injecting fuel during the valve open period. And I've found power there, and I know that other people have found power there, but it's not something you get to do very often, because in most cases, the injector is just barely big enough to get the job done.
Yeah, I get it. So you're basically trying to keep the valve event and the injector event synchronized, so we don't have some of the other problems that we talked about. That's wow.
Yep.
Yeah, closer to that carburetor ideal. In other words, you're getting closer to that ideal if you can do that. On the other hand, if the injector's, doing 95% duty cycle, which, modern day injectors will do safely, you've got periods where the air is literally flowing backwards in the runner because the air bounces around in there like a fucking ping pong ball as the valve opens and closes. And so you're not just injecting fuel when airflow is low, you're injecting fuel when it's going the wrong direction. So talk about ways to create a non-homogenous mixture. That's a good one, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay.
But I have to say that so much of this stuff becomes so complicated that for me to try to tell you I know the answer, here's the simple answer, is just not correct. There are too many variables, and in many cases, the only accurate thing I can do is make generalizations.
Yep.
Or just bullshit you.
Well, I think we're taking the first, and I think our guys know that some of these questions are somewhat theoretical, but they, you are leading them down the right roads.
But
anyway.
I think any car guy that just sits there, and I mean, I do it. Probably most car guys do it. How could this be better? Why does this work?
Right.
What's the effect of this?
Yep.
I mean, it constantly rattles around in your head. And when you're this kind of guy, it happens with computers, with mixing desks. It happens. It was everything. It's how you think.
Yep, no doubt.
And you could drive yourself crazy.
Absolutely.
Particularly,
And Mike does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I'm always trying to quantify things mathematically. I'm always trying to give mathematical, physics-based descriptions for real-world phenomena. And quite often, I get to a point where I realize this is way too fucking complicated for me to be able to do that. So stop the mad scientist bullshit and just, listen to what the dyno says, because you can't know. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just can't know everything you need to know, and you just got to say fuck it and let the dyno tell you what works.
Well, I was looking at your Facebook page, and I saw you had a Plex tuning cylinder pressure deal on there.
Yes.
Yep. Is that your own unit? Like, did you actually get that for yourself, or is that somebody's place you were at?
I did. Yeah, no, I did. I got it for myself, and the embarrassing story is I bought that fucking thing a year ago, and it literally sat in the box the whole time, because last year ended up being far, far, far busier than I expected it to be. And from the day I was born, I've had more projects on my plate than I can handle. So that thing's just been sitting there. But I do have experience back in my misguided youth with some, I don't want to say better quality cylinder pressure sensing systems. I'll just say more expensive. How's that? Because that Plex piece is a tremendous tool for the money. And by the way, the guy, I forget his name, and I couldn't even pronounce it if I did, is a really, really, really sharp motherfucker.
We had an email exchange going on with him, and at some point, we had talked about getting him on here, but the time differential was a problem.
Yeah, he's tremendous. He's one of those people that I think is very, very important to our industry. And any opportunity I get to jump up and down and, point like, hey, check this guy out, I like to do that because he's not just really smart, he's very practical, and he's very focused and very into what he's doing. But back to the cylinder pressure thing, I do have experience with that in the past with various other projects. And I will say that once you can see inside of the motor, well, yeah, let's say this. Everything you thought you knew might not be quite right, and I don't want that to sound like I'm insulting anyone who's never used that system. It's just that that's when you really get an accurate picture of what's going on inside of an engine. And a lot of times you scratch your head and say, well, fuck, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Shane just said he's wondering if you've ever actually seen an internal combustion engine. So it seems like you might be a fraud here.
Yeah, you think, is that guy's last name Tecklenburg by chance?
Something like that. Yeah, him and Marco.
You know that. Listen, I have 8x10 glossies of that guy performing fellatio on a goat. I don't know if you knew that. I've been to Facebook, but I've considered it. But I got to say one more thing. In today's society, where it's important to be tolerant, I love Shane like a brother, in spite of his willingness to do such things with farm animals.
Well,
also, hey, on a serious note, I got to say one more thing about Shane. This is like the kind of the same as the situation with the guy from Plex, except the two personality types are completely different. Shane is completely fucking fearless, and that motherfucker will try or do anything to figure out how something works. And it's just not something you see very often.
No. Very cool.
Constantly trying to figure shit out. And that motherfucker learns more in a week than most people do in a year. And so in spite of being, the ugliest motherfucker you've ever seen and smelling like a pile of rotting Limburger cheese, he's one of the smartest, most capable motherfuckers out there.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard things. I definitely have. I've heard things.
About the smell or how smart he is?
No, about the farm animals. About the goat. But
yeah, I know. I probably shouldn't have said that publicly. I told him I was going to keep it a secret, but I guess I fucked that up. Huh?
Well, it's a small show. We only get 40 or 50,000 downloads.
So. I imagine his Facebook page is going to probably some interesting pictures. At some.
Yeah. By the way, I'm thinking to myself earlier today, some of the shit that comes out of my mouth that normally only 2 or 3 people hear, now it's live and it's fucking recorded.
Yeah.
bad.
That is true. It is recorded. So,
Can be used against you.
no, you've been okay. You've been okay so far. Nothing's going to haunt you too bad.
So far.
Yeah, so far. The night's young. Well, not too young.
Let me tell you the fuel. Let me tell you the fuel injector story.
Yes.
That I was going to tell you before.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that.
So everybody remembers the old Bosch 842. They called them Indy Blues. They actually came in 4 different colors. The old EV1 injector. They flowed about 1,600 cc's per minute. They came with a blue top, a green top, a white top. The Chrysler version had a brown top, and the part numbers was like a 0280 155842. Everybody's used them. It's a bitch to get motors to idle with them. This was back in the early days, which were just a few years ago. But in any case, so being a pintle style injector, the fuel comes out and it hits the pintle. The end of the pintle is kind of a mushroom shape, and so the fuel spreads out into a cone coming out of the injector. And it was a really wide cone. Like, you look at that and you say, wow, was somebody intentionally trying to wet the runner walls with this injector? Because it's really bad when you consider what you're trying to do with it. So, and I don't think they'll mind me mentioning their names. Another real smart, cool guy, a guy named Trevor Hutter from Hutter Performance. His dad are working on a motor, and being old timers, they're working on an engine dyno, as they should, and they're having trouble with this motor. I don't remember much about it, but they're trying to run it, without the nitrous before they blast the nitrous. Some, big oversized V8 lump, and they're having problems with misfires and mixture distribution between cylinders, and the thing just runs rough and nasty, and it's kind of a piece of shit. And it's making some decent power numbers, but everybody's ears are telling them that it's kind of fucked up. So, to make a long story short, Trevor's dad, who's probably, like Shane, for instance, has this idea that what if we were to just cut that little mushroom shape off the end of the injector, so the fuel's not spraying all over the place, and see what happens. And so Trevor asks me, and I tell him, well, that's the dumbest fucking idea I ever heard, so let's go try it, right? Well, to make a long story short, I took a set, I removed that, I put them on the flow bench, put my strobe system on there, and saw literally just a stream of piss coming out of this injector. Like, imagine absolutely no effort being made to break the fuel up into little droplets. None whatsoever. Just a stream, like coming out of a garden hose. With no attachment on the end. Just a perfectly streamlined column of fluid coming out of there. I'm like, man, this is really fucked up. This is probably going to suck really bad, but I can't wait to see what happens. Short story, everything got better. The motor picked up power. The cylinder distribution got better. It got smoother. It was like a fucking magic trick.
I was just going to say magic.
And this thing was, yeah, that's what it seemed like. It was like a magic trick. And then not years later, but I had several things happen over the years since then that made it clear to me that one thing that you can do with a fuel injector that has a tremendous effect on the way it works in the motor, assuming that you don't have a total shit injector location and targeting like NASCAR does, for instance, one of the best things you can do is narrow that spray pattern to reduce the amount of fuel that you're putting on the runner wall as much as possible. So the back of the intake valve is at least pretty damn hot, right? The runner wall is not very hot, and the fuel coalesces there and just runs and drips into the motor in big, nasty gobs. And the only thing you've got going for you at that point is the charge motion and the shear that happens when the air and gobs of fuel get drawn past the valve. So essentially, if you can get all of the fuel into that motor without spraying it on the runner wall, that thing is going to run so much better. The individual cycle-to-cycle variation is going to be better. It's a night and day difference, and I've seen that happen now. I can't tell you how many times, even in situations where, in doing so, you absolutely destroyed any atomization that you had. So, back to me making generalizations, because sometimes things are too complex to really cover completely. In terms of spray pattern and atomization, spray pattern is almost everything, and atomization tends to mean very little Well, let me give you this one qualifier on a port-injected engine. With direct injection, it's completely different.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because in direct injection, the idea is that the fuel doesn't coalesce on anything. In a perfect world, you just spit this plume of fuel into the air and you light it off.
Right.
So anyway, anybody who's got time to play around with this should try something like that, because I've proven it to myself more times than I can count at this point that the best thing that I can possibly do with a fuel injector, if I'm able, is to target the valve and do anything I can to keep fuel off of the runner wall.
Well, see, just before you came on, we were talking about injector placement.
Yes.
And how crucial it was. Mm-hmm. And I made mention from the Circle Track stuff, because I've seen it firsthand when something gets perfect. Down nozzles, they're going from the outside of the head. And is that the principle? Because since you're going through the port, you can go directly at the backside of the valve?
If I understand you correctly, you're saying that when the injectors are mounted in the head, not in the intake manifold, the assumption is that it is targeting the valve exactly?
Yeah, they go right in the side of the head, and the nozzle kind of pokes right into, kind of just above the seat.
Yes, yeah, absolutely ideal, with the exception of some of the things that have been done by doing the opposite with the injector and putting it all the way up at the air inlet. There are advantages to that as well, and I'm going to tell you now that I can't explain all of them, but that more than one person has found power by doing that. So it seems like there's two ideals. One is to target the valve directly, which just always works, and then the other is to get the injector out, basically outside of the runner. Spraying it almost into the atmosphere, like you see on the F1 videos.
That's what we were just talking about. Yeah, we were just talking about that before he came on too.
Those guys wouldn't be doing that if it didn't pay off somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Now, exactly what's going on there, I mean, I could make a bunch of shit up. I could probably come up with a bunch of theories that are reasonable, but I'd rather kind of ask one of those guys to know exactly what they're up to. But all the in-between things don't seem to work worth a shit. I mean, you could, when you do that, you're spraying the injector. You have control over where you're putting that fuel, and I'm assuming you're putting it right down into the middle of the airstream. And the idea is that at least the majority of it stays suspended, and that could work pretty well. Where you run into trouble is when you get injectors that are just spraying the runner wall completely, like on a Mazda rotary, for instance. Or if you get an injector that has a very wide spray pattern, like that instance with the 842s, you can just make a night and day difference in the way the vehicle runs. Now, I will say that had the injector placement on that engine been different, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. So let's just say that the injector had been literally spraying just directly onto the runner wall, where all the fuel was going to coalesce on the runner wall no matter what. Maybe in that instance it wouldn't have mattered.
Very interesting.
Again, there's so many variables there. It's hard to quantify everything. But short story, spray pattern, get it on the valve. Spray pattern is worth far more than atomization is ever going to be on a port-injected engine. And I'm not throwing a theory at you or an equation that I pulled out of a book. I'm saying time on the dyno has proven it for myself, and who knows how many other people over time. And anyone listening to this, if they have some time to fuck around, can basically prove the same thing to themselves.
You'd have to wonder but those engines, the F1 engines, they were like 15,000 RPM or higher at that time. You wonder if they pull it up to give it more of a chance to atomize before it goes down, like you said, it's better to hit the back of the valve. Who knows? F1 is beyond,
Yeah, and that is one big benefit of doing that. We have a part of our booth, our display, we jokingly call it the time machine, because we've got a timed strobe on a fuel injector that's spraying fluid, and you can turn the knobs and even get it to appear as if, well, first of all, the fuel's coming out in slow motion, but if you turn the knob far enough, you can get it to actually look like the fuel is flowing in the reverse direction,
right,
just by the timing of the strobe. One of the things you'll see there is that there's a substantial distance that is required for atomization to occur, because atomization, with the exception of an impingement-style injector, atomization is mostly due to shearing or friction between the fast-moving fuel and the relatively slow-moving air around it, right? So, you're driving down the road, dip your finger in your Coke and stick it out the window, and it rips the droplets of fuel off your finger. And when they first leave your finger, they're big droplets, and then after 5 or 6 or 8 inches, they break into smaller droplets and finally disperse into whatever size they're going to be. That's absolutely the case, or one potential benefit. A typical injector, it's 5 or 6 inches away from the tip before the fuel breaks into what we'll call reasonable-sized droplets. Now, there are some really unique injectors made by Nippon Denso that are stock in the Mazda RX-8. They're also stock in the Nissan GTR. And so imagine we'll call it the atomizer plate on the end of the injector, which is normally a bunch of laser drilled holes or wire EDM'd holes. Imagine if that was done with the old style can opener, where you basically just sort of punch the triangle in and leave a big sharp edge hanging out on the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's almost how those injectors are designed. And so what happens is there's so much turbulence there in the hole itself that the fuel comes out and it's swirling around and mixing with the air almost immediately. And so you get this plume of finely atomized fuel, maybe 1.5 inches out of the tip of the injector. If anybody's interested, you can download an SAE paper on it. It's really cool stuff. And it's fun to look at too, under a timed strobe so you can really see it. Aside from that, that's the only way I've ever seen to get good atomization within just 1 inch or 2 of the tip of the injector. Okay.
I got another one if you don't mind. It's a pretty simple one, but it's been asked by 3 or 4 people already. Your preference when you tune, when and if you tune per cylinder, do you like EGT or wide bands? And I think I know the answer, but fire away.
Yeah. Another story. Imagine that. And it involves that goat fucker Shane. Hopefully, I'm not telling his secrets. I mean, lambda sensor, of course. 6 or 8 or 4 lambda sensors. I mean, that's the way to do it. However, he worked on a project where he had lambdas and EGTs, and what he found is that when he got the lambdas squared away, that the EGTs almost matched up. So this is just one project. I mean, you always have to remember when something like this happens, how many examples do you have? So this is one example, but based on that, you could make the argument that you could tune individual cylinders based on EGTs.
Yeah, as long as you're confident your EGTs are in good working order and kind of reliably functioning.
Yeah. So that was a Viper engine. I'm trying to remember, man, that was like 7-8 years ago, but it was pretty interesting to see how the EGTs almost laid on top of one another after making those changes. I've always wanted to try it again since on a different motor, and you know how it is. It gets added to the list of things that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
That big list.
I have that list. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, we all do.
Well, Mike's real big on the Viper engine, so.
Yeah. I don't know what that means.
I don't know where that came from. This is what I mean, Tad. Stuff goes on in your head, and I think you think that everybody can see in there.
No.
It's really kind of weird.
You do, but.
Really kind of weird, dude.
Oh, Lord. Go ahead, Mike. You're up.
I'm trying to absorb everything.
I know. It's a lot.
I mean, honestly, this is like, definitely threw a curveball in some of the things I thought I knew. Like when we're talking about it, I mean, I kind of knew about the vaporizing on the backside of valve because of the nozzles, because of down nozzles.
Yep.
But I always thought and was told the more fuel pressure, the better, because you get better droplets. But if you think about it, exactly what he said, that if you hit the wall, you change where the pattern is, well, then you're right back to the liquid.
Yep. I told you there were smarter people than you out there.
It's a really hard thing to quantify. It's hard to change just one thing. How do you change just atomization and nothing else?
Yep. Definitely tough.
Yeah.
And again, even then, if you're spraying in the wrong place, it doesn't matter anyway.
True.
Michael?
Well, I mean, let's go down my list here.
Go.
Of things that I want to talk about. Pressure, injector dynamics, meaning why do they open and close? How do they work with pressure? I mean, I have all these little footnotes, and he through his stories, kind of answered every one of them. I got nothing.
Okay.
I'm done. I know everything I need to know now. Thank you.
Right. Good night, folks.
Somebody, they ask a question, they're expecting a 30-second answer, and 27 minutes into it, they're falling asleep, So.
Not our guys. Our guys love this shit.
I'm glad. someone actually appreciates it.
Yeah, no, our guys will love this shit.
Well, a lot of the
because-
guys in the chat room are, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what's happened is a lot of the people that do something like podcasts or whatever, either they don't understand what real car guys think like. They don't understand, what it's like to go after that last little bit and understand as much as you possibly can. I think they're really completely different people from everybody else on the planet. I really, and they all seem to gravitate towards the same things.
I actually don't think it's just car guys. I think that car guys end up, to some degree, being in a bubble. I think the world is full of men. I think it's a sort of a male thing in general, who are into whatever they're into that take it to this extreme. I mean, I don't think it matters if you're into cars or guns or computer programming. I mean, I see, because I make a pretty serious effort to seek people out who excel in their field, and specifically a field different than mine, because I can learn things from them. And I don't think car guys are unique. I think that we just don't see all these other lunatics out there who are just as fucking crazy and curious and obsessive as we are about something other than cars. I mean, I know people who are into guitars like this. I know people, who will drive themselves absolutely fucking nuts because, the frets on their guitar, when they flatten out just the slightest bit, tend to fuck up the intonation, and they can hear it particularly when they play a major chord, or things like that.
Yeah.
People drive themselves fucking apeshit over details like that. So, I mean, you want to talk to a fucking obsessive lunatic, go find a drummer. Jesus Christ. Those guys are fucking crazy. I think it's just men. I think it's what makes us cool. How's that?
Yeah, good answer.
It probably is, but I know so many of them. I know so many people that just do not fit into that category at all.
Oh, yeah. I guess I do, too. They're the guys that are watching football all day Sunday and doing their fantasy football thing.
I wasn't even going to say that. I was going to say, well, then we're going to get on a political road again. We don't need to get into that.
I just pissed off. 80% of your listeners are like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
I'm done. Fuck this podcast, too.
I don't think so, because I think all the fantasy, and I'm with you on that. I couldn't do that shit, but the fantasy stuff is over because there's only.
Look, I already lost half of them by calling Shane a goat fucker anyway. That guy's got a bigger following than God.
I got to tell you, I don't think you lost any of them, because one of our guys, we might have to have Shane on, because one of our guys is asking if that required Velcro gloves to fuck a goat. So I don't know. We might have some more material.
Hey, I wasn't kidding when I said you should have Shane and I on together at the same time.
I know,
It's interesting.
Well, I mean, we'll discuss that this week. I mean, the listeners don't know, but I'm actually going to see you this week, which should be interesting.
We're just going to argue and insult each other for 2 hours, but sometimes the insults can get pretty good. We're creative guys.
Sure. I just hope we don't do it at the gym, because that I'll be in a strange place, and I don't want to get beat up as soon as I get there.
So you can't be talking about Shane and then bring up the gym and give me an opportunity to make such a horribly insulting joke.
Go.
You know what? That one's so easy. I just gotta let it go.
You should, because that is one of the rules of comedy, that you got to avoid the obvious. But you know what? Let's not avoid the obvious today.
Oh shit, that was funny.
You're going to make me go to my safe space.
Uh-oh. Relax, Michael.
Safe space.
Well, listen, why don't you, I know you said in the beginning that you don't want to talk about your company and you don't want to do a sales pitch, and I hear you, but at least you got to plug your company, because, everybody, I've told you, and I know you still may not believe it, but you can't imagine how many people have asked for you, and now, we see it in the chat room that they're all very excited to have listened, and you're the bomb, and a couple guys want to give you a hand job or whatever. But plug your deal.
Let me give you my Injector Dynamics pitch.
Do it.
We try, I say we, I mean me and Tony. I think most of the guys probably know Tony Palo is the other half of Injector Dynamics. I think it's fair to say that we try harder than everybody else to turn out high quality shit and to make our customers happy as the result of turning out high quality shit. I think we try harder than everybody else in that respect, and I think the results speak for themselves. And I mean, I can I could go on about, we've got this new injector and that new injector. You should give me your money so I can buy another fucking car to put in my garage. But look, we try really fucking hard. And because we're the kind of people who have tried to be good at things for our entire life, we tend to be pretty good at things. So that's my pitch, I guess. That's my Paul and Tony pitch. We don't fuck around. We try really hard. And so,
well, it's a great
dynamics pitch. That's who we are.
It's a great pitch, and I know the company, and I know a lot of our guys know the company, and I do agree. You guys are some of the hardest working guys in our industry, not only with injectors, but in all of it. And the proof is in the pudding. You guys have awesome products, and I am jealous of your display. Although when I was over to see you guys at PRI, you were gone. I talked to Tony for a little bit, but great company. You want to?
You mean?
Go ahead.
The time machine. You like that?
Oh yeah, I liked all of it. Very cool.
Oh, and you said the display. You liked the booth.
Yes, the booth. All of it.
See, I was leading you into a trap there because now I want to brag. I built that entire booth. I built that myself in my backyard.
Who did the light up logo?
See, there's the pitch. Oh, the light up logo. Sorry, I hired a sign company for that.
Okay, because I was like that was pretty cool.
Well, he didn't see the display, the whole booth deal. And actually, I didn't know you built it, but that is baller. I mean, their booth is real deal. I would never have guessed that.
On Wednesday, I'll show you where I built it.
I believe you, but yes, I will take.
I'm not bragging.
I'll take you up on that. And the last thing I want to ask you before we go is, do you like Mexican food? Because I kind of expect to be taken to the best Mexican restaurant in your area.
So here's the problem with that.
Go.
The best Mexican food is not in Phoenix. Phoenix Mexican food is a bunch of Mexican people who said, you know what? We want to make a decent living, so let's cater to the white boys. And so that's how the food is. I call it white boy Mexican food. It's not that it's not good. It's just not fucking awesome. If we go 90 miles down the road to Tucson and get to the south side of town where nobody speaks English and they don't take credit cards, and the lady cooking your food has dirty fingernails, and the building looks like the fucking roof is getting ready to fall in, that's Mexican food that will set you free. It'll change your fucking religion. But seriously, in Phoenix,
damn,
I haven't found any outstanding Mexican food yet.
All right, well then you could surprise me.
Just haven't.
You pick the place and I'll buy.
Surprise you. We'll go to fucking McDonald's.
Somebody mentioned Taco Bell, so
that'll work. Whatever it
I like
takes.
Taco Bell.
Whatever it
I like
takes.
Taco Bell. Yeah.
All right, well listen, man, we're gonna let you go. We appreciate your time. Everybody does, and I am going to try to put something together with you and Shane because I think it can be ridiculous. I really do.
I might have to prepare for that.
You definitely would have to prepare.
This could be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, this was another fantastic episode. I hope everybody realizes all the nuggets of information that were in each story because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
There's a lot there, at least to answer maybe some of the questions you had.
Yep. I think they're happy.
So listen, if Shane and I do this together, I have to be in the same room with him. So if he starts to get ahead of me, he starts pulling ahead, I can punch him in the fucking mouth, right? You know what I mean?
Okay.
So we're gonna have to arrange for flights or something like that.
All right. Well, we'll look at our budget and we'll see if we can fly somebody around. Who knows? We can't fly Shane because he usually, I know how he flies. Anyway.
Just first class? Is that the only way he goes?
That's it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Just like Tom.
Okay.
You do the same thing, you dick.
Sorry.
You're in little cubicles on the airplane and shit. Come on.
All right.
Give me a break. Stealing nut bowls.
Nut bowls.
All right, man. Well, again, we thank you for your time.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk again.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I'll see you Wednesday.
Yeah. See you Wednesday, man.
All right. Great. Thank you, Paul.
Hey, by
Yes.
the way, Wednesday's squat day.
Oh, nice.
Everybody loves legs, right?
Tom's going to call me. I'm stuck on the toilet. I can't get up. All right.
I know better. All right, man. I'll see you soon.
Oh, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
See ya.
There's nothing worse than that, dude. A hard leg day, and like you get a little hurt.
No,
the next day.
He was lying. He told me already he's going to do upper body, so that's okay.
No, so that walking up from the cellar, those stairs get really long.
I mean, he's 10 years younger than me. He'd kill me at the gym, and he's a big dude. He's like a power lifter guy.
This is like the second time or maybe the third time that I've talked to somebody and I had all the questions, like things I wanted to know.
Yep.
And they just went through them, and I just throw the pen down and be like, fuck it, I'll just sit here and listen.
Yep.
Yeah. No, he was good. he was really good. Smart guy.
Like all that stuff about the atomization, and I mean, it just goes to show the misconceptions that people have. And I mean, I know that injectors, get goofy, wonky, if Jeff prefers. As you start to increase pressure, they get harder to drive, and the temperature comes up. A lot of things come up. But that was an amazing discussion, and I hope people understand how many little pieces of information were really in there.
Well, the good thing about this is it's a podcast, so they can rewind it and listen to it and make sure they get all the little nuggets. Because there were a ton.
And I mean, I saw a million questions come by. A million questions.
We got to a lot of them. I was surprised at how many questions were asked by multiple guys.
Yeah.
So we got to a bunch.
Like I saw one, like a guy asked why are injectors rated in cc's. I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer to that either, because probably the pounds per hour relates to how we would think about horsepower and brake specific fuel curve. They go another direction.
Is it a metric standard thing?
It might be.
Yeah, I'm sure there's just a conversion.
I'm sure it's just a conversion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure if you put it online, there's probably a million, people that had nothing better to do made a Google calculator.
Yeah.
They could just,
there's probably an app.
Yeah, there's an app for everything.
An app for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of those questions, we saw them and we would have got to them, but it was just, there was a lot there.
Yeah, we got to a lot.
And like I said, he kind of blew me away on all the things that I was already planning on asking.
Yep. Well, we'll get him again, too.
That's fantastic.
With more in-depth questions?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
And I mean, after hearing a guy like that, how could you not use their stuff?
Oh, I know. I wouldn't even consider using something else, but I never did. So
this is one of those things, because we don't want it to be necessarily like we're advertising for somebody. I mean, that's not why we bring people on.
No.
We bring people on because they can bring a level of knowledge and understanding to stuff that I would like to hope you can't get from most other podcasts. That's kind of the idea. And I don't know. To me, it was a lot of fun. I'm pleased.
Me too. Glad we had him.
Oh, yeah.
Tad, you were good too.
No diesel questions.
Although I have no
especially the Viper.
idea. Where did the Viper thing come from? Please, just for the mental health of the listeners, explain where that came from.
Somebody brought a Viper to TK way back when. You said you drove around the block with your friend that has it, because he's got that, and he had a Hummer with a diesel and crap like that, and you said you hated the Viper because it kept on throwing the belts.
But do you see what must go on in this motherfucker's head?
I know. He went right back to it, expecting you to remember that.
You think he would, because he's the one that told it to me.
But
context.
I don't even know what to say.
I know. It's timing. Timing is everything. Whatever.
You're a strange cat, Tad. Let me tell you, you're a strange
That's
cat.
right. You're all right. Don't worry about it.
I remember this from that long ago, and you don't, so.
That must be it.
Must be it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week. You going to be back here, Tom?
Yeah.
So where are you going? To just a weekend?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll be back.
All right. So we'll be back Monday night. We'll see what's going on. Got a couple things in the works already.
All right. Later, guys.
See ya.